Lost Voices of Myth and Legend, The Past Moments, Part 2. The last moments of Medusa. The cave was dark, cold, and silent. The only sound was the faint hiss of the serpents that coiled and slithered upon her head, the serpents that were once her golden hair, now twisted into living nightmares. Her eyes, which had once shone with innocence and purity, were shut tight, though she could still feel the weight of the curse pressing down on her soul. Medusa had not asked for this. She had never sought to become a monster. She had been beautiful once. Once, she had been a priestess of Athena, a woman whose devotion was as deep as the roots of the earth. She had dedicated herself to her goddess, her body and soul pledged to purity and chastity. But that was before the god of the seas, Poseidon, had desecrated her sacred space, before he had torn her apart in the very temple where she had sworn to remain untouched. After that, nothing had been the same. Athena, the goddess she had worshipped, had turned against her, punishing her as though she were the cause of her own suffering. Now here she was, her once angelic face twisted into a grotesque mask, her body a living nightmare that no mortal could look upon without turning to stone. She had been cast out from the world, a pariah, a creature feared and reviled. No one would speak her name with pity. They would only speak of her with dread. She had become the embodiment of death, a weapon of destruction that could not be stopped, and yet she was as broken as the rocks that lined the shores she had once walked. And still she felt a deep sorrow in her heart, not for herself, but for the world that could never know the woman she had once been. Not for herself, but for the world that could never know the woman she had once been. She could never return to the temple, never return to the days before Poseidon had shattered everything. It was in the depths of this agony, her thoughts swirling like the serpents that now adorned her head, that she heard the footsteps. They were light, tentative, like the steps of a mortal who was not yet sure what he had come to do. She knew, even before she opened her eyes, who it was. Perseus. The hero sent by the gods, guided by Athena's wisdom, to end her life. The hero who was to be the one to deliver the final blow, to free her from her cursed existence. She had heard of him, of his quest, of his fame. He was a man, an innocent one too, or so she thought, sent to end her life. The very thought of it stirred a dark well of sorrow and resignation within her. Will it hurt? She thought, her heart heavy as the cold stone around her. She had no idea what death would bring, but part of her, a small quiet voice deep inside, almost welcomed it. To end this suffering, to cease being a monster, to escape the torment that had become her existence, was that not a blessing? And then, his voice. It was low, almost hesitant, but there was something in it that made her heart tighten. There was no hatred in his voice, only pity, a pity that she would have given anything to avoid. "Medusa," he said, and the name, so softly spoken, almost made her flinch. How could anyone still speak her name with reverence, even after everything? "I am sorry," he whispered, "but this is the only way." The words stung, though she could not blame him. He was just another mortal, another puppet of the gods. He didn't know what she had become, or who she had been. She was the monster now, not the woman who had loved and served, who had been loyal and pure. She was nothing more than a weapon. There was a moment of silence, a moment where Medusa could almost feel the sting of the sword before it came. She could feel her pulse quicken, the breath in her chest become shallow, and yet in that final moment the weight of everything fell upon her. The memories of who she had been and who she would never be again, the rage that had consumed her, the hopelessness that had followed. But there was one thought that lingered, one that burned through her like a flame in the darkness. At least I will be free. In the last seconds, as Perseus approached with his gleaming sword, Medusa's thoughts softened. She no longer wanted vengeance, nor did she wish for anyone else to suffer the same fate she had. She only wanted peace, a peace that would come when the cold steel of the sword ended her life, when the world could finally forget her, and she could slip quietly into the oblivion she so desperately sought. As Perseus's sword arced through the air, Medusa felt the briefest moment of warmth, almost like a flicker of the life she had once known. And then, it was gone. The blow was swift and clean, and the world of pain and loneliness that Medusa had endured for so long ceased to be. In her final moments, there was no fear. There was only release.